So today's book is called How to Be Everything by Emilie Wapnick. This book talks about being a multi-potentialite, which is another word for a polymath, which is a person who pursues multiple different disciplines throughout their lifetime. So just to give an example of a modern day person who's done that would be Richard Branson or David Bowie, and people in the past would be somebody like Leonardo da Vinci or Benjamin Franklin. The book goes about it in a very practical, option-oriented way. So it gives you an insight into the fact that there's no one way to do this. She gives an example of Einstein, which she terms the Einstein approach. So in the early 1900s, when Einstein created some of his most influential work, he was actually working as a patent officer in the Swiss government. And during this time, this job allowed him to have an income, and it also allowed him to have the time and space to work on his theories. Another approach he looks at is the Phoenix approach. This is when you pursue something for a long time, maybe a couple of months or a couple of years, and you decide to pursue a completely different area of things. I suppose just to give an example of that would be potentially Madonna. She reinvents herself every now and again, and that's the nature of the Phoenix. Emily points to three simple things that to keep in mind when you're looking to pursue multiple different things: money, meaning, and variety. I guess what was helpful is that she points to the fact that they don't need to necessarily come from the same place. So again, referring to the Einstein approach, you can have a full-time job where the majority of your money is coming from, and you can pursue the other stuff in your spare time. And she talks about a guy in the book who leverages the different aspects of his skills. So he had a full-time job in IT, and he worked in his passions on the side. And so in his IT role, he had to use his analytical and problem-solving skills, and I think he was looking at maybe dance or something different in his spare time, which got him more in touch with the body and a different aspect of human nature. So it actually re-energized him, these shifts. Another thing that was quite useful was the fact that she points to when to quit. So there is a lot of feelings of guilt and feelings of flakiness that can come up when you're looking to pursue something different. And sometimes this can come from the confusion between resistance and the personal endpoint. So with resistance, you'll feel, generally you'll feel intense feeling, and it doesn't feel good. But a lot of the time it's a signal to push forward. And just to give a practical example for myself, when I'm doing my first few videos on YouTube, there's a lot of resistance to it because it's something new and I don't know how it's going to go. And usually it's quite sharp and intense, but when I gain some clarity and perspective around it and kind of see why is there resistance here, it's easier to push forward. But that's different to the personal endpoint. So another example will be I'll dive into a topic for a few months and maybe a few years, and after a while I'll feel that I'm quite bored with it now that I've kind of come for what I've gotten what I came for. And this feeling's more of something that creeps up on you. And it can feel like you need to persevere, that you can't be a quitter. But actually the best thing for somebody who's a multi-potentialite to do is to acknowledge that and to move in another direction. Because I found in my own journey that even when I was learning programming, I went doing a bit more writing for a bit of time, and it gave me that bit of a break. So when I come back to it, I've got a bit more perspective and clarity around what areas I want to pursue more and what way I want to approach it. So she also looks at the work involved in learning in the book, and she gives two practical tips as well on those days where you feel like you're not making progress or you're just having a bad day. It's useful to acknowledge that we all go through that. And on those days, two things to keep in mind would be to lower your expectations. So for that day, you can be cool with like not doing anything, or you can kind of go, what's the one thing I can do today that will set me up for tomorrow when I might be feeling a bit better. Another thing to do would be to track the small wins. So there's a tendency within us, it's more of a biological thing from I suppose when we were hunter-gatherers and we needed to be more aware of the negatives, that we focus more, our brain tends to focus more on the negatives to keep us alive, because we're not really built for happiness and fulfillment. We're more built for survival mode. Our wiring is anyway. So if you cultivate just the practice of tracking the small wins, no matter how minuscule they might seem to you, it just builds up that appreciation, and your mind tends to focus more on the good that's actually happening rather than the negatives, and that can help fuel you in the process, that you'll keep going because you can see the benefits to it. Another thing she mentions is just meditation or movement, like anything that will get you back into your body in those times will give you that clarity and perspective, like just even go for a walk or something like that. It just gives you that perspective you need, because in those moments you're just not seeing it clearly. So it's good to know that. She looks at the insecurities as well that's involved around being a multi-potentialite, because in the modern day things are very much set up for somebody who's looking to specialize. And she points to the fact that there's nothing wrong with specializing, but it's not for everybody. And actually, you could be doing yourself a disservice by forcing yourself to specialize, and not pursuing the stuff that will help you connect the dots and bring that creativity that might not be available in that role or that company without you pursuing those things. Another thing she points to is the community aspect of things. So you'll find that as you go pursuing things you really want to do, you'll find like-minded people in communities where they can help you to progress, because when it's something you really want to do, it becomes, in my own journey, I felt it becomes less personal and more focused on how do I get better at this, because it's something I want to do. And in those communities, you'll find people ahead of you who will give you good feedback, some instant feedback. That's a large part of the learning journey. And also in those communities, you can give back as well. You can help the people who are a bit who are struggling in areas you might have already mastered a bit more. So that's the book. For anybody, I'd recommend it for anybody who is in a job where you feel like you also want to explore other things, because I know in my own life it's very easy to think that I need to specialize in something and let go of all my other interests that are academic. But this book points to the fact that you can start doing that outside of work, and just seeing that there's more options than you might think. So I think this book kind of opens my mind to the practical options that are there for anybody who feels stifled by a specialization. So if you've read the book, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. If you want to read a little bit more about the book, then you can click into the blog post below this video. So until next time, have fun and enjoy the process.